Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from Jon and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads, and if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show, and if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Well, hello everyone. It is Jon, Pollock and Wai Ting here with you on Wednesday night, April the 17th, following AEW Dynamite from...
Dynamite.
Shit. Cued me right up perfectly. How are you tonight?
I was doing great until that.
You were having a flawless day until that.
Man.
Well,
damn it.
That's okay. Dude, I have had the longest day. Not from a work perspective, but just literally. My daughter is going through this deal where she wakes up at 5 a.m. every morning and just, she wakes up, everyone else has to wake up. She's singing, she's yelling, she's just, I want to go downstairs. I want to go downstairs. I had to get up, I had to get her downstairs. I'm like, okay, you can watch some TV. It's 5 in the morning. I don't know what you're going to do all day. And then I go back to sleep. And then I hear her yelling from downstairs, Netflix won't work. And she just, if no one's there to help her, she just repeats it. So it's just over and over and over and over again. So I was up from 5 a.m. till 7. I'm exhausted right now, dude. It's been a long day. And I don't have it in me if she continues this the next few nights.
Oh, man.
I don't know what to do.
I don't know what to suggest, man.
I can't leave. She sleeps on the second floor, so it's a pretty lofty set of flight of stairs to go down. I can't leave this gate open for her to go down. In the middle of the day, she can go up and down these stairs when it's bright out, but when it's dark in the morning, I cannot let her just do this on her own. The alternative is she wakes up and she needs someone to open that gate for her, and it's just havoc, dude. Until
okay, so so you've conceded that she is allowed to watch Netflix at that time of day.
Oh,
correct?
Dude, she could pretty much tell me she wants to take the car out for a spin at 5 in the morning, and I'd be contemplating it at this time. Okay.
So I guess is there a way you can just have Netflix be upstairs so she doesn't have to go downstairs to watch?
I might put a TV in her room if I have to. I'm gonna do whatever I need to.
Right.
Don't judge.
I mean, no, I certainly don't. I'm sorry. Either that or give her the Netflix customer support hotline and tell her to, handle it with them.
Well, maybe I will say that, you know what? You're going for a sleepover. Wai is going to get to experience this.
Jeez. Wow. That would be.
Anyway, Here we are to chat about whatever is going on in the world of pro wrestling and such. How was your day? Good day?
Yeah, good overall, I would say. Yeah, we took Oscar to get a haircut. His second at a barber shop, and we, the first time there were a lot of tears, there's just it was a lot more difficult, and we were anticipating that this time around, but this time around put on the Netflix and it was pretty quiet. So
there's a reason that this thing is just a runaway train when it comes to the streaming wars are over. It's been won really by Netflix, and it's not the brilliant minds that have created this. It's these little kids that have solidified this war for Netflix to have won.
But yeah, no. Today went well. Considering that, so great. I had a great day.
Okay, that could be it. That could be our whole show right there. I wonder what our listenership would just be like if we came on here for 5 minutes and just gave you the update and then signed off. It would be wonderful. But we have other news to get to. Let's start off with Vince McMahon. You familiar?
Yes, I've heard. Okay, yes.
NBC News did a story on Vince McMahon, his whereabouts. This was like a checkup on Vince McMahon, essentially. And we got a bunch of details in this on what Vince McMahon has been up to since this Janelle Grant lawsuit has been filed back in January. It notes that he has kept in touch with friends and associates, and mentioning the fact Donald Trump he has had some conversations with, although sources had stated that they have not been talking about legal issues, nor Donald Trump giving him legal advice. And I mean, what's going to, I think, get a lot of attention is the fact that he has had contact with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, now a TKO board member, and John Cena. On the surface, I don't know how surprising that would be. But I think just given the ample amount of distance that TKO has tried to project between their company and Vince McMahon, the fact that you do have a board member, however involved or innocuous the contact has been, there has been contact between Vince McMahon and Dwayne Johnson. Is that a fair assessment to make, Way?
I guess so. I suppose for me, like, this wasn't something that was so shocking. I imagine these are men that would have had this sort of relationship throughout the entirety of their careers, and something like this doesn't seem like it's that unusual to me. Maybe given the context of, like, somebody like Dwayne Johnson being a TKO board member, it could be perceived that way. But I almost feel like it's, if maybe the history between the two, it doesn't feel all that surprising.
It also stated he has not spoken with Paul Levesque or Stephanie McMahon regarding company matters. It added the PW Insider report from last week that Stephanie currently has no involvement in the company, and that McMahon's side believes that in regards to any federal charges, he doesn't believe any charges are coming his way, at least according to those close to McMahon, and that the Janelle Grant lawsuit will be settled out of court, according to a person close to McMahon. And Janelle Grant's side came back pretty strong in this piece, including Ann Callis, the lawyer for Vince McMahon, who stated that Vince McMahon raped, trafficked, and physically assaulted Janelle Grant as part of his decades-long normalization of treating women within the WWE as objects. He might have thought that Janelle would just walk away, but that is wishful thinking and couldn't be further from the case. Adding, every day we are focused on adding to our mountain of evidence, speaking with other victims, hiring renowned experts on sex trafficking, coercive control, and preparing to vociferously litigate the case. It also stated the fact that there have been no settlement discussions, and a spokesperson for Janelle Grant did issue a comment to the media stating it's shameful that Mr. Johnson and Mr. Cena would associate themselves with an individual with decades of allegations, just like Janelle's. Behind-the-scenes support is louder than any public statement ever could be. So, I mean, they are making it pretty clear that they have not engaged in any settlement talks, and that would be wishful thinking on McMahon's part at this juncture of where the case is. But, essentially from that, I mean, there's a lot of detail in here about like the man is eating, he's having haircuts. It's like he hasn't died, essentially. But I think like there is interesting details throughout this piece. Did you get a chance to like read the whole thing? And did you have any kind of thoughts about what the overall tone of it was and how this painted Vince McMahon differently, if at all?
I did get a chance to read it. I don't know if it painted him any differently than what I was expecting. Like, I never really thought that Vince would be the type to, present any sort of like outward signs of like panic or fear when it comes to somebody publicly. Well, when it comes to him being in trouble. I mean, this is the guy who, upon the initiation of all of this, decided to go on TV the very next day, to show his face in almost like some form of defiance. And it almost feels like he's taken a similar tact, at least, in the public, still going out to restaurants, still going on vacations to Italy, and living his life, working out. I don't know how much more you can really read into that. He's alive, I suppose, is as much as we can gain from this.
He's got a lot of money on hand,
Yes,
as
he
we've
does.
learned. The piece does note that like this was a collaboration between both NBC News and CNBC. They spoke with 11 people familiar with McMahon and WWE, and it included noting that multiple WWE insiders said he hasn't had any contact with company leaders and figureheads since he resigned. And I think this piece, you would certainly read this, and from the WWE side, continuing to emphasize this new era, this what is not called the post Vince McMahon era is what it is, and continuing to create that distance. And I guess that is where people might look at the just the fact that there has been outreach or contact involving a current board member that I think would be of note, and maybe to a lesser degree John Cena, who we know there is a relationship there between Vince McMahon and John Cena, and he will receive, I think, less scrutiny just because he's not a board member and has that kind of a position within the company.
Sure.
So anyway, the whole story can be read on CNBC's site, and we have a link to it on the main page if you want to check out more of that. Nyla Rose, this story came out. First of all, it was realwrestling.net that had the first report of this story. So what happened was when AEW ran the Paycom Center in Oklahoma City back on December the 20th, there was a match taped for ROH between Nyla Rose and Alejandra Lyon. And it has come out that the Oklahoma Athletic Commission, they have a provision, and Oklahoma being a state that does oversee professional wrestling, that prohibits transgendered individuals being in like wrestling matches. So this was posted where it reads that this was kind of AEW was alerted about this, and it says here that the administrator, Joe Miller, explained that AEW, a professional wrestling organization, had an event at the Paycom Center December 20th where a transgender wrestler, born male, had a match with a female wrestler. The Oklahoma State Athletic Commission had no idea, as the wrestler had filled, and they used the pronoun his, but for the sake of this, I'm just going to read from it, his wrestling license application out as a female. The commission was alerted by a local wrestling organization that had previously done the same thing. That organization acknowledged that they knew that was a violation of the commission rules and that they would refrain from doing it again in the future. Joe Miller, again the administrator, explained that he called AEW and explained that it was a violation of the rules. He then asked the commission if there was any other action they would like to take against AEW. Mike Bauer stated that the commission boxing, kickboxing, and MMA applications all ask if someone has had gender reassignment, but the wrestling application does not. He stated that it needs to be updated so this doesn't happen in the future. Commission members ask questions and discuss the issues that come along with male versus female wrestling. So it's technically like intergender wrestling that is not allowed, and they're making that argument here. So this resulted in a warning for AEW, and that if this happens again in the future, they could be facing a fine. And just given the details of this story, it's blowing up, and obviously a lot of people very defensive here in the case of Nyla Rose in all of this, not the least of which is the fact that this is professional wrestling we are talking about, and this seems like beyond antiquated, and one that Oklahoma does not seem like they want to just make sure that this is not going to be something that falls through the cracks. But I mean, if we're being technical here, I mean, they really didn't even do anything wrong. If this application, it's not like she lied on the application or didn't disclose something. I would not put it on AEW or any of these performers to have to figure out what the protocols are for kickboxing and boxing and assume that that applies to professional wrestling. It just seems like such a antiquated thought here. And I think it's an interesting question if like AEW, it would just be, I think, a really, would you even run the state at that point, where I think it would look really bad for them if they just went back and went by these guidelines that are so outdated that your audience is going to have tremendous pushback against if Nyla Rose is not booked on an AEW/ROH card if you run in the state.
Yeah, I totally agree. I wouldn't say, like, again, something like this is that shocking, but I mean, in some ways it is, just given how I feel like society has been moving, and just the messaging of that little statement itself, I think is very sad to see, in 2024. So I think for AEW, that a company that I think very much prides itself on at least being progressive in its featuring of people like Nyla Rose, I think they need to take a stand. I think that at least the public, judging from the outcry tonight, demands it. And I would feel terrible if somebody who's a fan in Oklahoma might not be able to get their usual AEW show coming to town. But I really do feel like, for the sake of hopefully changing some of those attitudes, towards this athletic commission, I would love to see AEW take a stand with this.
Like, it just to me is something so beyond outdated. Like, the idea that here is a worked entertainment vehicle of where two people are working together I mean, I don't know. It's just so bizarre to me that this is even a thing. And maybe AEW's stance is we're going to run in Oklahoma. We're going to book Nyla Rose and you can fine us. And it's on Oklahoma to either step in and state you're not allowed to come into the state. And that's fine. It's not as like this is one of those instances. And there's been a lot of times when I believe some oversight from commissions is needed. But then you have examples like this that really trample that argument when you get this kind of just ridiculous oversight and applying this kind of criteria to it. So anyway, it was a giant story throughout the day and probably will continue to be. And we'll see when what their schedule is like about running Oklahoma in the future. Nick Khan spoke at the Sports Business Journal CAA World Congress of Sports convention in Los Angeles, and Arash Markazi of Sporting Tribune tweeted out some notes from Nick Khan's sit-down. Paul Levesque was also a guest on a panel chat and noted that WWE President Nick Khan wasn't ready to announce the location of WrestleMania for next year just yet, but said you can assume it won't be in an outdoor East Coast stadium again, and it won't go head-to-head with the Final Four again. Las Vegas is one of the cities that is under consideration. He also stated that Nick Khan said that the Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, and Survivor Series will be held in the U.S. and Canada for the foreseeable future, but other premium events such as Backlash, Elimination Chamber, and King of the Ring may take place internationally. So this is the focus for a lot of people about the location for WrestleMania. I can't remember the last time that a year out we did not know the location for WrestleMania. Of course, Minneapolis has been thrown out there. Obviously, nothing is finalized yet. And throwing in Las Vegas into the mix, while also noting the fact that we're probably going to see WrestleMania pushed later into the month at least, and avoiding the Final Four, which I don't think is a bad decision at all for them to move it later. Like, I think this event, it's pretty much flexible of when you run WrestleMania, and yeah, even sending it several weeks into April might even open up some of the locations that you have. But yeah, having people freeze in Philadelphia weather in April, probably not going to be one that they try again.
Kind of makes you
at that time of the year.
Kind of makes you wonder why it's taken 40 iterations of it before maybe a thought like this had occurred. You know, was the WWE at some point, did they find it advantageous to have this period of scheduling? It also, to me, makes me wonder if they would consider moving WrestleMania completely out of this particular season and to another, you know, like at this point, what exactly is keeping it in the sort of March, April zone?
I think it's just been tradition that they've had it there, and that's just been the time that they have just earmarked it. You could move WrestleMania to any time you want. Like, your schedule will not be like WrestleMania's success will not be, outside of running it on like a New Year's Eve or something. Like, you're not going to hurt WrestleMania wherever you move it. And if you move it later, it does open up some of the potential locations that you have. And it's been very rare that we've had outdoor stadiums in the Northeast, like outside of MetLife Stadium. This is like, those are the only ones that come to mind where the weather was a significant issue beyond like rain, where, I mean, you're going to run into that threat no matter where you're running. Sure.
Yeah. But at this stage, like they're such a powerful entity that I think they could have their choice of, any sort of time of year that they want to hold an event like this. So it's interesting. Las Vegas, what do you think? It sounds a bit more attractive than.
I think Las Vegas makes a ton of sense to run it at Allegiant Stadium. I mean, we have seen through, we'll get into some of the business numbers that UFC 300 just put out, which was a monster show for them. But I mean, F1 has found a lot of success 1 year into their Las Vegas experiment. Like, that city is just tailor-made for events such as this. And you can run the T-Mobile, you can run MGM. From a tourist perspective, I don't know if you have too many better options than a Vegas Mania, and that is Nick Khan's backyard. It's where he grew up, and I could certainly see Las Vegas being in the mix. I mean, if you're somebody that's making travel plans a year out, no offense, but you're looking at Minneapolis and Las Vegas. I mean, what are you gearing your vacation around next year? What would be your preferred destination spot?
It would probably be Vegas. Although I feel like you could probably expect to pay a whole lot more. for a Vegas stage during something like a WrestleMania. But
I'm sure WWE would take that into account and make sure it's a very affordable week in Las Vegas, of course. So yes, we await to get the official destination for Mania next year. Some TV notes, Raw on Monday. This was up against the WNBA draft, where Raw actually was number one on cable. It did beat the draft. They did a .61 in the demo, 1,807,000 viewers. So not as high as the night after Mania, but still their highest since February the 19th, throwing out last week. And like the WNBA draft, it did over 2.4 million viewers, but a .58 in the demo, Raw doing a 6-1 over the course of 3 hours. And in Canada, the show did 283,900 viewers and 98,000 in the 25 to 54 demo. And I cannot recall the last time this happened, but not only did Raw finish in the top 10 among sports for the night, the replay of Raw from midnight till 3 a.m. Eastern did 113,000 viewers and also finished in the top 10. And I cannot ever recall the replay of Raw. Like that is like for the Eastern time zone, you're talking about a show that goes till 3 in the morning on a Monday night. Maybe this is what you're gonna watch. My daughter can be watching potentially.
She already knows how to use Netflix, so she said.
That's it. And the peak quarter was the belt presentation to Awesome Truth. This was helped. There were no ad breaks during this particular quarter, but they went over 2,110,000 viewers for this particular quarter, 917,000 in the demo. NXT doing 625,000 viewers and a .17 in the demo on Tuesday night. And we kind of got our answer about the future of Drew Gulak, and it did not look promising. Did you hear about this angle on Tuesday?
Yes, I did. Yeah. R.I.P.
Yeah, Drew Gulak got the the family took care of Drew Gulak, and now the No Quarter Catch crew are indebted.
Did you find it interesting the way that they framed the reasons for why they had to take care of Drew Gulak?
Refresh my memory. What was the exact verbiage?
So I believe they said we had to take out the trash, and for the betterment of the industry, I believe was the exact words.
Yeah, I mean not one of those, not too cryptic of a segment, and the fact that they went out of their way to give a storyline reason for it, it was almost like it was almost like as much of a public statement as you're going to get in regards to the situation about Drew Gulak. Like I really get the sense like he's gone.
I do sense that as well. I mean, typically though, you would expect them to just kind of like not mention it whatsoever and just kind of like have it, like you no longer see Drew Gulak. But this felt deliberate in that we don't want to just quietly let this guy go or something like that. It was like we're going to make a statement on our show, as much of one as we can, and tie it into a storyline write-off. Anyway, that was noteworthy from the show on Tuesday. All right. Coming up this week, we've got, Rampage will be airing right after Collision. So we got 3 hours on Saturday night. The TNT schedule is listing next week. Collision is supposed to start at 8:30 Eastern or whenever the basketball playoffs end. So there'll be another 3-hour block next Saturday. So Rampage is going to be bumped all over the place. So that is on Saturday, as is TNA Rebellion. And this is the lineup for their pay-per-view in Las Vegas, the same location they ran back in January, with Moose against Nick Nemeth for the TNA title, Jordan Grace against Steph DeLander for the Knockouts title, Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers of The System defending the tag titles against Speedball Mike Bailey and Trent Seven. Mustafa Ali defends the X Division title against Jake Something. A Full Metal Mayhem match between Frankie Kazarian and Eric Young. A Last Man Standing match between Josh Alexander and Hammerstone. Rich Swann against Joe Hendry in a singles match. That is their big stipulation. And then on the Countdown show, it is Danny Luna and Jody Threat defending the Knockouts tag titles against Havoc and Rosemary, and Leon Slater teaming with ABC against the Rascals and Myron Reed. Looks like a very good show on paper, but man, does it feel like a total different vibe than what they had going into the January pay-per-view, where there was all the interest around the TNA rebranding, and it just feels like this company has gone through 6 months of change in that period from January, which was one of their most successful pay-per-views in years. And man, I just think it's going to be tough to
we're going to see how impactful that pay-per-view was based on how this one performs. Like, are there people that they bought that pay-per-view, they were satisfied, and they come back? Because it does not feel like it going into Saturday's show.
Yeah, I guess you always you can ask if that sort of publicity could have been established 2 times. You know, like it felt like it was big just seeing a new logo and getting a new brand, and how much of that could have been replicated even if Scott D'Amore wasn't let go. I think at this point they need to show that this is going to be the same company, and just because D'Amore is no longer there doesn't mean that the quality of these shows are going to be any lessened. You know, I think this is going to be a show that is important for them to show that they're able to keep consistent with the quality that its core base expects from them. So maybe it's going to be word of mouth coming from the show that will, you know, attract either good press or bad press.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You're coming the night before a much bigger pay-per-view with AEW, so that doesn't help things. But I'm curious to see what the interest level is for this Rebellion card. So we will have coverage of that on the site on Saturday. And also coming up on Thursday, we will have Ask Away, the mailbag show. You can still get your questions in over at forum.postwrestling.com. Friday, we have MCU Later dropping with Rich Van and WH Park. And then Way and I will be up Friday night with Rewind to SmackDown.
Just one last note here. So apparently after Dynamite went off the air, Ruby Soho came out with a segment with Angelo Parker where she announced that she was pregnant. Now, normally I guess I wouldn't necessarily put this in the news pack. We do have Sean Ross Sapp, though, confirming that this is legitimate. So I didn't even know they were legitimately dating. But Sean says, congrats to she and Angelo.
Oh, well, congratulations to them.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a relationship in real life. I mean, I guess more information to come there. But if legitimate, congratulations to them.
Congratulations to the couple.
Yeah. And of course, one last note here. One last quick plug for our CN Tower climb happening this Sunday. How are you feeling, John, about it?
Dude, I've been working out a lot this week. I am so sore today. I don't know. This is going to be a challenge.
It's going to.
But I'm ready for it.
Oh, it's going to be a huge challenge for me, man, because I was hoping to do steps today, but we've just had
It rained all day long.
So hopefully, we'll be all right. But thankfully, our fundraiser is going well because at the moment at postwrestling.com/WWF, we are we're doing tremendously well. So thank you, everybody who's already contributed so far. We are, at this moment, $102 away from $2,000. So almost $2,000 raised. Hopefully we could get close to 3 by Sunday. So postwrestling.com/WWF if you want to support.
Thank you to all of those that have thrown in your support for Team Post / Poison Rana. And also one other note, just want to wish our best to Matt Cardona, who revealed that he tore his pec last weekend and he's going to need surgery, which is super unfortunate. We talk about, all injuries are really tough. When you're talking about somebody on the independent level and that holds the schedule of the level of a Matt Cardona, like I know he has his podcast business and such and has really been, one of this week marked the 4 years since the mass releases that he was part of. I mean, he has kind of thrived outside, but obviously that's a big setback for him. He has not disclosed if it's a full tear, partial tear, but regardless, he's going to need surgery. So he will be on the sidelines for a undetermined amount of time. So hopefully he can make as speedy a recovery as possible. On to Dynamite tonight. The Indiana Farmers Coliseum. WrestleTix announcing 2,495. They ran the same venue back in September, drawing 3,006, at least tickets out, so a bit below from their last time in the market. Jon Moxley comes out with the IWGP title, noting that he won one of his first titles here in Indianapolis, and he never had any help along the way, and he tells all of his doubters to kiss his ass, and said that he told them to watch me as he went out and did what they thought he couldn't do. He's been chasing this IWGP title for years. People thought he couldn't get it, but it's about what you have inside, and you dig down deep, prove the doubters wrong, and that's what AEW is all about. And we got the first of several AEW chants on this show before he shifted focus to the Don Callis family, issuing a challenge to Powerhouse Hobbs, who he kind of introduced back in the Daily's Place days, and said he is going to take Hobbs to the deepest of waters, show him that Callis is feeding him lies after they put out a hit on Danielson, last week with Takeshita brain bustering him on the apron or on the ramp, and that no one can touch Jon Moxley. There will only be one Jon Moxley. A great promo from Moxley, and looks like he will not be wrestling on the pay-per-view, and instead they're holding him off for Wednesday's Dynamite, which is back at Daly's Place next week.
When you have a Will Ospreay, when you have a Kazuchika Okada, I feel like you can have a Mox sit out, perhaps one of these, save him, make him feel special for a TV.
Is this not wild that this pay-per-view is happening, and we're like looking at the insane depth that they have on this lineup, and this is a lineup without Jon Moxley, without Kenny Omega, without Adam Cole, without MJF, and there's probably others that I'm forgetting about. Like that's wild.
It's incredible. They have an incredible roster that will probably shine brightest whenever they're featured on pay-per-view. But it's to the benefit of somebody's like a Jon Moxley or like an MJF that they can go away for a while and let the audience miss them, so that by the next time they're actually on pay-per-view, it'll feel that much more special. Mox also hasn't been around to tell any sort of significant long-term story heading into this cycle, so I think this is perfectly fine. This was the type of Mox promo that is just so good and feels so effortless. I feel like he's really been missed, especially in these several weeks of discourse of surrounding, all the CM Punk drama. He had a line in here that, basically kind of showed a little bit about the fighting spirit philosophy of what he considers AEW to be made of. And that's this type of I think, not focusing so much on it, but focusing on it enough to make you proud to be an AEW fan. That sort of verbiage, that sort of leadership, I thought was very much missing over these past several weeks for this company.
Yeah, and I'm not going to compare the two, but I thought that this message kind of resonated a bit more with the AEW audience than the Adam Copeland one.
Yep.
Not just because of the history that Jon Moxley has with this brand, pretty much from day one, from that first pay-per-view, but it's also I think that a lot of fans can agree with the sentiment that Adam Copeland had about let's be positive, and that I think that this message from Jon Moxley, they do want a certain level of edginess to it as well,
yes.
rather than just pumping up let's all be positive and let's all just love wrestling. I think they want kind of some of this grittiness that a Jon Moxley brings, sort of like this middle finger from the number 2 company, without having to hit you over the head that we're trying to attack the bigger company out there. I just thought this one landed better than the Adam Copeland one, even though I think both had the same sentiment of what they wanted to convey to their audience of sort of rallying their fan base.
Agreed.
So that's coming up next week with Hobbs and Jon Moxley. Mercedes Moné is backstage and addresses being attacked in the dark last week, stating that someone was too afraid to face her in the light, but she gets right back up and she can't wait to pay back that bitch, and accuses Julia Hart of being the one to turn the lights out, or maybe she's framing somebody else, making them think that it's Julia Hart in reference to it being Willow Nightingale. But she is going to face the winner at Double or Nothing. She's going to be 100%, and she's going to be watching this mixed tag. Now, I would say that this was an improvement over last week, which I felt was pretty universally panned in terms of Mercedes, everyone kind of looking at this promo style and it feeling inauthentic. And I thought this one, not to say this was the world's greatest promo, but I thought it was an improvement over last week.
It was certainly the best she sounded during this AEW run, which again isn't saying much, but it does break a streak of, I would say, a string of disappointing appearances since her debut. Her debut was perfectly fine. She didn't have to say a whole lot. She just had to come out, be there, look like a star, which she does. But it was, after that, and then the commentary run, which wasn't that very good, and then last week, which was even that much more disappointing, that I think is starting to really, really amplify the narrative that Mercedes Moné has a lot of deficiencies on the microphone. This, I thought, stopped that. This showed a lot more of, I think, what made her character work in the WWE. It certainly helps that she's got more material to work with this week. She's looking for revenge after this mysterious attack from somebody in the dark. She has 2 opponents that she's targeting. But overall, this was a more charismatic sort of attitude-filled, delivery than we've seen from her. I still feel like there might be a little bit much reliance on the CEO moniker and also the Moné catchphrases to end every single one of these, that to me takes away a little bit from the seriousness and the realism of an attack like this. You know, somebody attacks you, you're looking for your mystery attacker. I don't know if the first thing I'm going to do is just like, you know, talk about how I'm the CEO and you know, end my line with what's her line even? Moné something? Moné talks? Whatever. One of those things. I think it's a little too much reliance on that. But overall, in terms of just delivery, I thought it showed improvement.
Adam Copeland is out for the mixed tag match, and Willow has been attacked in the back as Chris Statlander and Stokely Hathaway are tending to her, and they're worried about her match for Sunday. So the lights are out, and Brody King appears with Julia Hart on the ramp, and King goes after Copeland, and Copeland gets placed on a chair on the floor as Brody hits a running cross body into Copeland, sending him into the barricade. And for a guy that, I mean, obviously has a lot of confidence in his body holding up in this second stage of his career, I mean, extremely, this man just has a lot of faith that his body is going to stay together, because I don't know if I would be volunteering for this one.
A lot of trust in Brody King.
I mean, you're still getting just like rammed into this barricade, but Copeland is selling, gets into the ring, and man, this crowd in Indianapolis, not to say it was a giant crowd, we're talking like under 3,000 people, but man, did they get into a lot on this show, and did sound like a pretty vocal audience, and this match was an example of it. They're working on Copeland's neck, including Julia choking him from the floor, but then Copeland is attacking Brody, and they bring up a number of years ago Brody breaking his jaw and needing it wired shut, and Adam Copeland has scouted this. Go after the man's weak jawline. And Copeland busts out a blockbuster, and the crowd is cheering as he slowly gets up and sets up for the spear, but King stops him with a lariat. King misses a cannonball in the corner, and this is when Willow makes her way down and joins the match. Willow tags in as Copeland is sticking his leg back, and it leads to Copeland hitting a spear onto King as Hart is on the floor, and then Willow looks into the corner, sees Brody King, and hits the Oklahoma Cannonball onto Brody King.
It's, right, you're just saying that in reference to Oklahoma being in the news.
We got an intergender spot here.
Okay.
This would not be allowed in Oklahoma, male and female interaction.
That is correct, yes. Mm-hmm.
So Hart nails her with the chain, and then Copeland takes King to the floor. Heartless is applied. Willow is out after the chain shot, and the match ends at 8:53. Willow is out, and then Mercedes walks down with a chair, clearing the ring, and Hart is leaving with King while Mercedes is there with Willow, drops the chair, shakes hands with Copeland, and just gives a stare to Willow Nightingale to end the segment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, so sends us into the weekend for both of these matches. I thought the match itself was very simple. You know, Brody King beat down for almost 90% of this on Adam Copeland, setting up the Willow return. It was, I thought, a good TV match, you know, primarily based for story. I thought they did a good job of building interest in both of these matches.
Renee does a sit down with Samoa Joe, and he says that Swerve is more of a nuisance, keeps standing when he knocks him down, which is not a prerequisite for a champion. It's a prerequisite for a punching bag. And he's worried about his title getting touched by Prince Nana. You know where Nana's been. And said that Swerve is a choke artist, and he won't have to worry on Sunday because I'll be the one choking you out.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Young Bucks, there's a video package setting up the Bucks and FTR match, which gets cut midway through when the Young Bucks state, hey, we've got a super stacked show. We're cutting the video package. We'll put it up on social. And they have a tune-up for Dynasty tonight, and they're going to become the first 3-time tag champions. Okada says Pac is a dead man and is not going to make it to Dynasty. Mm-hmm. And that takes us to Okada and the Young Bucks against Pac, Penta, and Daniel Garcia, with Matt delivering punches in the corner and then doing Daniel Garcia's dance to mock him. And then during the picture-in-picture break, Matt gets onto the microphone and tells Excalibur and Tony to lay out, and he starts doing commentary, leading to a spot where Nick Jackson does a step-up knee onto Daniel Garcia, and then we start to get CM Punk chants. And they were brief, but we did have CM Punk chants here from this spot. And Garcia is fighting back.
At one point, Matt did the sort of, blew a kiss to somebody holding up an anti-Buck sign.
Oh, did he? Okay. So Matt tags in. He's continuing to do commentary, insulting Daniel Garcia, and tells him to show me something. And Garcia suplexes him, and they keep packing Okada away until late in the match when they're finally in. And this is when the crowd is loving this. A Black Arrow gets stopped when Matt knocks him off balance, and then Okada drop kicks Garcia and hits Garcia and Penta with tombstones. And they do this deal where the Bucks hit super kicks onto Garcia, and he's knocked into a Rainmaker by Okada for the finish in 12 minutes and 21 seconds. And they made a point to state that the Elite are 3-0 as a trios tandem.
I think it's a cool trios spot, just a Rainmaker set up into the super kick and then the actual clothesline itself. I for as much I think conversation as there was and hype surrounding the CM Punk footage, I felt like it was very understated today. Like the only references you really had were in some of those more subtle digs from the Bucks themselves. The actual body of the show didn't really make any mention of it. Nor any mention of Jack Perry, despite I think the show fully embracing the result of the Jon Moxley Naito match. No mention of Jack Perry's appearance at all, and that might be deliberate to just kind of make you not think about it at all. But it was a fine trios match. Matt, I thought, was fun doing the whole commentary shtick. Garcia continues to be incredibly over, despite the sort of like maybe less not very prominently featured roles that he gets.
Yeah, I think that I think the Jack Perry handling is going to largely sway people in terms of what their overall opinion of this entire thing has been. Like, if this is something that's a catalyst for Jack Perry to get over, then maybe the end justifies the means for people. And it's just going to be a really tough balance. Like, you're really going to elicit these CM Punk chants, and the key will be to transfer all of that into a meaningful program with Jack Perry as a babyface or as a heel, whichever is. And I think the audience is going to dictate that of where they go with Jack Perry, because I think you're going to get mixed reactions in different cities for Jack Perry. Afterwards, they're attacking Garcia, and a ladder is brought in. Garcia is slammed onto the ladder, and Nick climbs to the top, but Pac runs in to chase them off with the bell hammer. And they do note that Okada and Pac, because it's for the Continental Championship, will be Continental rules, meaning no one is allowed ringside for the match. Then it is time for Taz, who has brokered a meeting between Hook and Chris Jericho. This brokering has meant getting a segment and informing these two to be in the ring at the same time. So it has been brokered. Jericho notes his history with Taz. He's known him for 30 years. Crowd was very anti-Jericho here and said that, Hook, the reason I pulled you off the apron last week was to just get your attention. And unfortunately, Shibata was collateral damage in the moment. He says, I don't feel that you were listening to me enough. And some people call me the greatest of all time. I am the learning tree, and all those who have listened to me have moved on to the next level, citing Orange Cassidy, Daniel Garcia, Will Ospreay, Jon Moxley. They have entered the Jericho vortex and he wants them to get to the top of Wizard Mountain and breathe in the rarefied air of Chris Jericho. How many of these things has Jericho trademarked? All of them?
I'm guessing all of them and then more.
Wizard Mountain. He knows that Hook can get to the top with his help, and Hook turns him down. He does not want Jericho's help. And Jericho's response is, don't be stupid. And this is when Taz interjects, and Jericho just cuts him off and tells him, I'm doing what you should have done, giving him proper guidance, and refers to Taz as dead weight that Hook has had around him his whole life. Jericho and Taz start to get into an argument and says, Hook, you are not as good as you think you are. And then as Taz tries to get involved again, Jericho shoves him and down goes Taz, with Excalibur noting that we all know Taz has a knee problem. And Hook says you cross the line, and Hook issues a challenge anytime, anywhere for Chris Jericho to face him again. And they're going to do a match at Dynasty on Sunday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For the FTW title, by the way. So this could be our title change.
I guess so. I guess it would be nice for Jericho to state that he actually wanted the FTW title, but he really has no need for it, no desire for it.
Maybe it can become the Vortex Wizard Rarefied Air Championship.
I'm sure it's already been trademarked. Yeah. I thought Jericho was good here. You know, now that he's able to take his airtime and his promo energy to direct it towards receiving a heel reaction, I think he's doing a good job of just playing with what the audience already feels about him anyway. And they used Taz to great effect to build that heat. And I would say overall, they've done a good job of building a story for Hook without Hook necessarily needing to say a whole lot. Hook did have a few lines here, you know, when he got really close to Jericho. And from what little I heard, it suggests to me that he's still very kind of nervous and still pretty underdeveloped as a promo. But I hope he's able to, maybe at the end of this, because I see this feud continuing afterwards, I hope he's able to take some bigger strides, you know, on the microphone during this feud.
Yeah, and again, I thought that the way Taz was utilized here, I mean, he goes back onto commentary, and like the smart part that they have done is that Taz is never the crazy obsessed father. It's like Hook is his own guy. He does his own stuff, and it doesn't make it this weird awkwardness where Taz has to go back into commentary mode afterward. Like they kind of have established this, and this was one of the rare times that they did put Taz and Hook in kind of that father-son on-screen like relationship.
Very similar to the Jon Moxley dynamic as well.
Mm-hmm. So there's that segment, and Renee sits down with Swerve, admits that he has stumbled along the way, and talks about all the adversity he has overcome over the past year, including being put in a coffin, being stapled, being hit with barbed wire, and taken out with a chain a few weeks ago by Samoa Joe, but he keeps getting back up. And this Sunday, you will call me the new AEW champion, and he's going to tell Joe to his face why he's going to beat him later tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Mariah May against Deonna Purrazzo. Taz back on commentary and needs some ice for his knee. May is stomping on her, and Deonna is targeting the arm throughout the match. Deonna does this hip throw into the Fujiwara armbar, but May gets the rope break. And then Purrazzo tries for a power bomb and loses her mid-power bomb, so May lands awkwardly. They had to get back on track here. Purrazzo is sent into the corner. May lands a hip attack, and then the tornado DDT for a 2 count. Mayday gets countered as May sits on top, and Purrazzo counters with a roll-up in 7:28, pinning Mariah May, and that sets the scene for Toni Storm to enter the ring. Thunder Rosa runs down, knocking down Luther in the process to save Deonna, but Thunder and Deonna are arguing because Deonna does not want her help, and then May yanks Deonna to the floor. Storm tries for the Storm Zero, but that's thwarted as Thunder drops Storm and takes out Lipstick and rubs it all over Toni Storm's face. For our go home angle. So the one thing was you put all this lipstick all over her face, and then like the reveal of all this stuff all over his face, they showed her in like the black and white. So it's like you could barely even make out like how awful this looked. But regardless,
I mean, I thought the point was made. You know, it probably was more so about just the act itself than the actual, you know, image of it, right? I thought the match, first of all, was decent. You know, it was nice to see these two get consistent airtime on Dynamite, I would say, over the past several weeks. You know, not that long ago, it felt like the women's division, at least that gets featured on Dynamite, is predominantly just whoever is holding the women's championship, and that would typically be Toni Storm or like I'm trying to even think who else, you know, would have received that consistent airtime. Now they've really, in my opinion, at least broadened at least this storyline to include a consistent name like Mariah May, and surprisingly, a consistent name like Deonna Purrazzo, who hasn't really suffered from the post, you know, title challenge disappearing act. You know, they've kept her relevant by having her, you know, be involved in with Thunder Rosa, still engaged in a somewhat of a feud with Toni Storm as well. And they gave her a win here over Mariah May. So it keeps her still active as a future challenger, and also continues to, of course, build to Rosa versus Toni Storm as well.
Renee interviewed the Bang Bang Gang, and they issued a challenge for Sunday, the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass winner take all, with both sets of trios belts on the line. The Acclaimed and Daddy Ass respond after the break, and Billy Gunn states, "Jay, I've already beaten the life out of you." Correction, you beat the life out of me in that match. And says he has been, and this is serious, "I've been beating the Guns since they were little kids." Abusive Daddy Ass. What a hero. And Bowen says he's got his own golden bat, and you can choke on that. And then Caster refers to Jay as Twink Blade and issues the tag challenge for the Guns for Collision on Saturday night. So you can add that to our 3 hours of AEW programming the night before. So did you get this all straight? All these matches involving the Guns and the Acclaimed?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Despite maybe how I don't know, PG-13 this promo was, it doesn't make me any more interested in this feud. I'm very much ready for this program to end.
Home invasions, children being beaten. I mean, this program is at it all. Orange Cassidy against Shane Taylor with Anthony Ogogo and Lee Moriarty in Taylor's corner. We saw Taylor do like a Tower of London off the top rope, and Moriarty and Ogogo are getting involved behind the referee's back. Cassidy fights back, but he's got no one with him. And Ogogo grabs his boot from the floor. He kicks Lee off and then manages the stun dog to Taylor and a pair of tope suicidas, taking out Moriarty and Ogogo. And then he tries for the orange punch. Taylor ducks, landing a lariat, but Orange comes back, lands the punch, but Shane Taylor remains on his feet, nails Cassidy, but then Orange powers up, hits him with one final orange punch that puts down Taylor, and Cassidy manages the win in 8 minutes. Moriarty and Ogogo then get involved, attacking him, and they do explain on commentary that Shibata and Romero are not here tonight. And I guess Chuck Taylor is just never here. And they hit him with a left hook to the body by Ogogo, and we see Christopher Daniels coming to the rescue of Orange Cassidy. When in doubt, there's Christopher Daniels, and he gets attacked by a hooded man with a chair, and it's Trent Beretta, who has cleared the pathway for Taylor and company to continue the attack, and they lay out Orange Cassidy with Taylor landing a right hand and the Border City stretch applied by Lee Moriarty from the friendless Orange Cassidy.
I believe Matt Sydal was there too, and he also got beat down.
Points for effort. Thank you, Matt Sydal. Great job.
Yeah. Good match. You know, Shane Taylor, I think, has really established himself pretty well as like a guy with a pretty heavy, unique style that I think is also very consistent on TV. So happy to see him at least get a bit more airtime for Shane Taylor Promotions. This was fine. I don't really have. It was perfectly
was
fine.
It perfectly fine though?
I don't even know if I would say perfectly. Like I almost expected something a bit bigger from Trent. You know, coming off of like the big angle. And this almost felt like,
dude, this sets up Trent against Matt Sydal, Trent against Christopher Daniels. Like, we're going to get some solid Rampage build-up. Because I imagine him and Orange Cassidy is going to be probably Double or Nothing.
Sure, yeah. Again, it's fine to take time because like they're not having a match on the pay-per-view, so it's fine to just like not really like climax this one just yet. But that's all really I could say about it because it wasn't necessarily a segment that like made me that much more excited to see Trent versus Orange Cassidy.
Then there was a video for Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly, including some old ROH footage. And that takes us to Will Ospreay and Claudio Castagnoli for the first time ever. They had this one attempt, Will doing the multiple revolution into the head scissors, and boy, did Claudio need to assist here because this was not smooth. We will say that. Claudio catches the pescado, drills him onto the apron, and Don Callis is on commentary. And the idea here is that he is like running Will into the ground with all of these matches. And Don Callis explains his thinking. If you've got a Lamborghini, you've got to drive it.
That is it. Yes.
Was this a Lamborghini effort from Will and Claudio?
I would very much say so. Yeah. They kept the Kia parked in the garage.
So then Will is hitting Kawada kicks. Claudio responds with uppercuts, and then it's Will applying a sharpshooter. Claudio reverses, applying his own, and then moves to a crossface while gouging Will's eyes. Will's up, lands a super kick, and hits a tiger driver for a 2 count, and then gets poked in the eyes again in the corner. I was thinking maybe Claudio was borrowing from either Chris Weidman or Max Holloway here. You need to get you need AEW to get some specialized gloves. And then the Ricola bomb is countered, and while countering this, man, he just spikes Claudio. And Taz confirms he landed right on his head, and Will manages a roll-up for a near fall. And the closing stretch here was pretty impressive. There's an os cutter that Claudio catches on his back and turns it into like a modified, like safer burning hammer. Will manages to get up, tries for the hidden blade, but runs into a pop-up uppercut, and then the giant swing gets countered by Will, like just elevating himself to turn it into a swinging DDT, which looked awesome. Climbs to the top, leap of faith for a massive near fall, and as Claudio is staggering to his knees, is hit with the hidden blade, and Will wins in 14 minutes, 28 seconds.
I feel like this is the type of match where you know it was going to be excellent even before the bell rang, and I certainly don't think they disappointed. It was ultra athletic and hard hitting, full of pretty complex and for the most part perfectly executed sequences. You can always count on, I think, these two to throw in something very unique that you've never seen before in any of their matches, so it came no surprise that you at least saw some of that in this one. I thought Ospreay turning that giant swing into like a tornado DDT it's like one of those physics defying things that you wouldn't even think about in a video game, and somehow these two managed to pull it off.
Have we ever seen the giant swing countered like that?
I don't know. I don't know how anybody would counter a giant swing.
It's tough. I mean, it's been solved after all this time.
They figured it out here. Yes.
So very, very good match between these two. And in the post-match, it's Kyle Fletcher, Powerhouse Hobbs, and Takeshita going after Claudio. And Takeshita teases the same move he gave Danielson, a brainbuster on the ramp, when Moxley's music hits and he charges out from the crowd, fighting with Hobbs. And Ospreay is pissed at the Don Callis family for their actions. He wants to face Danielson at his best and to prove who the best is. And this led to Ospreay storming to the back and leaving, and it makes you wonder if this is the full break will somehow come out of this match at Dynasty. Part of me hopes that this is not like riddled with Don Callis family involvement, but they are somewhat setting that full break for the near future.
Yeah, I feel like it's more like Tony's booking to give the audiences what they're looking for, in that's a relatively pure Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay match, and then you can do the angle after all of that.
You're definitely going to get Danielson and Takeshita at some point after the Brainbuster spot. I think that's pretty much guaranteed. You wouldn't be doing that significant of a spot for Takeshita if not to pay it off at some point. So Collision on Saturday night, they have announced Kazuchika Okada and the Young Bucks against Pac and FTR, which should be fantastic. And I will quote Excalibur. What? It's Bryan Danielson and Claudio Castagnoli against Kyle Fletcher and Konosuke Takeshita in a bunkhouse brawl.
And they made the graphic already.
I mean, how quick did they have this one ready? I've been saying so many nights over the past week, when are we going to get to the bunkhouse brawl with Danielson and Claudio and Fletcher and Takeshita? Well, we're going to get it on Saturday. I mean,
so what exactly is different about a bunkhouse brawl versus just an ODQ?
It's the same thing. This is let's test our luck to make sure Danielson does not get hurt the night before this massive match with Will Ospreay by putting him in what's probably going to be a 20-minute just war that these four are going to have. Plus the Acclaimed against the Guns, and because it's 420 on Saturday, they have booked Rob Van Dam because weed's hilarious. And next week, Moxley and Hobbs is the only match we have announced thus far for Daily's Place. Final segment, Swerve and Prince Nana are out. States that Joe was scared last week. He knows he's going to beat Joe and calls him out so he can say this to his face. And Joe is being held back by security. So they come ringside. Swerve comes off the top and hits the largest Swerve stomp ever, where he hits two guys and we get the domino effect of like all of these guys that all go to the ground. It was one of the most ridiculous spots I've seen this year.
It was I guess this was probably the more video game like spot of everything on this show. Like a man stepping on a pile of people, like Mario.
He gets right into Joe's face and tells him he's going to take that belt, and they come to blows. Joe nails Swerve, and then Prince Nana is there in the corner, and dude, Joe puts the arms up, and he's like going to do the dance to Nana, and I thought he was going to kill Prince Nana, and he was going to kill him before the pay-per-view, but Swerve comes back with a big boot, house call, and then tries for the Swerve stomp, but he is knocked off balance, and Joe yells at him, "You're not that man," and hits the muscle buster, posing over Swerve to end the show. Really good end segment here, and I mean, this pay-per-view looks excellent, and I think it's going to be excellent on Sunday. How would you state this show? Did it do a good job of pushing it in terms of a go-home show? How did it deliver?
I thought it did a pretty decent job of like putting all the necessary I guess, attention on the matches that are coming up on the weekend. Now, I think the closing angle was really strong here between Swerve and Joe. But when I look at the totality of this build, I can't help but feel like this is not the biggest thing that's going on in the company at the moment. You know, the biggest conversation that this company managed to drum up over the past month has been everything surrounding CM Punk.
I mean, he's the biggest star.
Yeah, he's headlining, he's main eventing the pay-per-view at this.
Yeah, him and Jack Perry are the Wembley Stadium match. Yeah. So I mean, you have to go and push that the hardest.
Yeah, I only bring it up because it's relevant to this conversation. But I do feel like all of that talk, all of that attention placed on all of that last week, hurt what my perception is of the main event coming up this Sunday. It does not feel like the most important thing in the AEW world right now.
I'm with you. I think that for whatever you want to make the counter argument about Jack Perry, and it was a great reaction that he got on Friday, and he's probably not getting that level of reaction without all the stuff from earlier in the week that helped it. But I feel if he had done the exact same entrance with the Crimea River jacket, I still think it would have been a pretty heated audience in Chicago. And more importantly, I think when he does show up in AEW, it would have been that much more of a kind of left field return, as opposed to now where everyone is just expecting him any show now to be back. That his first appearance back and cuts a great promo. Like, I think you're into the same. You could have crafted this in such a way that the security footage was unnecessary, but it did get their desired discussion. And I think ultimately that is what they're looking for, is engagement and reaction, pro or con. I think they view that as a win. And you can't deny that this got a ton of that focus, but was it to the detriment of other aspects? We're going to see. This is a very important pay-per-view from the sense of they did a very good number for World's End back in December. Can they replicate that for this additional pay-per-view? I think this pay-per-view is going to do very well, and I think overall expanding the pay-per-view calendar is going to be a positive for AEW this year. But it is, it's asking your audience for an additional, cost of a pay-per-view that you're adding to the list. And for some, like they have consumed a lot of wrestling over the last 2 weeks, but this is a pretty great card.
It's an incredible lineup, and even though Joe versus Swerve and possibly Swerve's coronation as champion that we've all been waiting for such a long time is and should be the main event, I think for me the most interest I have is in a Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson, which is I think every bit of the type of dream match that you're wanting for a pay-per-view like this, and then up and down the card, it's Okada versus Pac, which is also an incredible match. And then you have the Young Bucks versus FTR in a ladder match. You have Thunder Rosa versus Tony Storm, Kyle O'Reilly versus Roderick Strong. Like, up and down the card, it's very, very strong.
Yeah, like that 6-man. I'm interested to see like Julia Hart and Willow. I think that's going to do very well. Like this, I would say, like, in terms of like an outcome, I think the people are most interested in like Joe and Swerve. I do not feel that they're going to do the title switch on this show. That's my thought. I think they're going to hold it off.
Is there enough interest? Do you run the risk of people not being interested in Swerve after he fails yet again? That's the only question I would ask.
Yes, of course. You're always risking that. I mean, I think that if they went with him on Sunday, I would not think it's a bad choice by any stretch. I just think the way it's been set up, at the very least, like I cannot see this match going where Hangman Page is not involved in some way. Like there's still that lingering issue. And it's always a risk when you're pushing something off, and your hope is that it just makes it that much bigger. And we learned with WrestleMania this year. I mean, they pushed that off for a year and it was even bigger. But that's always a risk, is that you miss your timing, and you've gone to this match like several times now.
Yeah. I only ask because I feel, with Cody, he's managed to stay like, the main character of the entire show throughout the course of the entire year. Can Swerve do that? Because I feel like this past month has already kind of threatened that. Swerve is one of the central figures of the show, but I think that Will Ospreay is very much coming in feeling like he's becoming, or very close to becoming, the top babyface of the show. And do you run the risk of audiences wanting to see him become champion more so than Swerve? Maybe there's a story to be told between those two going for that championship. Of course, other drama has really kind of taken the conversation away from Swerve too. But it's the quality of this match that I think will ultimately dictate how much people will be talking about Swerve, how much people will be talking about Samoa Joe coming out of this, and I could see a good level of violence for this match.
All right. We're going to go to your feedback and super chats if you have any, and see what everyone thought about tonight's Go Home Dynamite before Dynasty.
Yeah, let's go to some of our super chats here. This one comes to us from Matthew Yanes, who sends $2 to just simply say, "Good luck with the CN Tower walk. Be safe." Thank you, Matthew. We will. And Mario Meza sends 80 pesos just to support. Thank you very much for that, Mario.
Thank you. All right. We go to Benjamin, who notes that Will Ospreay repping neuro-differentiated folks frankly and unapologetically. By far, I don't quite understand what that means.
Will Ospreay came out this week or on AEW and spoke about his diagnosis with autism and ADHD. So.
Yes, I did not see the video, but yes, that was on with RJ. By far, my favorite part of AEW. What a gem! He is right. Our autism ADHD can be a superpower. I feel a little bad for the audience stuck behind the glass in that arena. At many points, the crowd went dead quiet too. The Jericho and Hook program lacks panache. Jericho feels pretty stale right now, and Hook's monosyllabic promos are a little tired. AEW itself is even starting to feel a little dry, like they shed their creative capital on last week's lame stunt. Well, I was not as negative on tonight's show, or the crowd for that matter. I think with the Jericho Hook program, I think that is the sense of a lot of tiredness that people have had. And I mean, for whatever you want to say, I mean, Jericho is fully leaning into that with the idea that is the role he is playing. And I mean, the audience did respond to this segment tonight, but yeah, it is one that I would say on the whole is not connecting.
I think it's an improvement over like what we've seen from Jericho as a babyface, certainly. And you also have to remember, like, the whole goal of this is to try to get Hook a substantial storytelling program. And I guess I wonder how many people you trust to play the other part, to basically do all the talking for a Hook program in order to get him hot enough for like a pay-per-view match, for instance. Jericho, I think, is a great candidate for it. And I think it's also just starting, so I'm open to seeing like what this feud is like once Jericho is a full-on heel, and whether or not they can elevate Hook to a substantially higher level. So, all right, let's go up next to Tanise from Georgia, who says Mox's absence left a palpable void in recent Dynamite episodes. His unique energy is irreplaceable. It's becoming a concern to see matches derailed before they start, especially 2 weeks in a row. It's time for Jericho to consider taking a break. Deonna and Mariah's performance fell short. However, they undoubtedly possess the potential for a much better match. Swerve's promos aren't hitting the mark for me lately. While he's been satisfactory, Joe is truly shining as they head into Dynasty, but the ending angle got me pumped. And surprise, surprise, Claudio and Ospreay delivered an outstanding match, making for a decent Dynamite overall.
Okay. Steve grows weed. It's his big week. Happy 420 week for all who partake. Nice to see a lot less politics on the screen this week. Just some great wrestling and a great promo by Moxley. Closing angle kept the feud hot going into Sunday. Do you think Chuck will side with Trent, or will the best friends officially be over?
I feel like for Chuck's sake, I would. Like, what else is Chuck Taylor to do? Like, maybe there's more of a story to be told in the transition, first like feuding with Trent. Is he even healthy enough to come back? Maybe even not. So how much can he really do? But I certainly feel like Chuck Taylor could use any sort of story or character development over the course of these past 5 years in AEW. So if I was,
the guy hasn't wrestled since October.
Right. Yeah. Let's go to Brian from New Jersey, who says, I thought this was a stronger show than the past 2 weeks and heated things up for the stacked pay-per-view. I really like the main event, and I very much anticipate Ospreay finally splitting from the Don Callis family, even though a feud with them might be a bit redundant since Ospreay has beaten all three. Good return promo from Moxley, good closing segment with Joe and Swerve. Mercedes Moné needs someone talking for her, as it would fit her character and would prevent her from cutting another stilted promo. The Acclaimed Bang Bang Gang feud is running on fumes.
All right, and the last word goes to Muggin. There were no public airing of grievances this week, thank God. Ospreay and Castagnoli was a strong match, and it took another step with Will beginning to distance himself from Callis and company. Moxley feels fresh after his extended excursion, and even though AEW has too many titles on TV, the IWGP World title is a good excuse to have on the program because of its prestige. I'm still waiting for Mercy's AEW run to go into another gear, and this whodunit is keeping it to a snail's pace. I bet Hangman will cost Swerve the title on Sunday. There is Muggin's fearless prediction for Dynasty. All right. I skipped over this over the news, but just wanted to go over the UFC. They put out a press release. That's when you know they've had a big event, when they send out a press release. So in addition to their gate and attendance figures, they did a real big number on ESPN, over 1.8 million viewers, peaking for the final just before the prelims ended, they peaked at 2.49 million viewers. So very, very strong television performance for them. And then this was the number one all-time sales of merchandise for a UFC arena event, and second all-time behind the UFC 193 card between Ronda Rousey and Holly Holm, which is pretty sizable when you're talking about a venue that is the size of T-Mobile Arena, and this is number 2 to Etihad Stadium in Melbourne. For global partnerships, I know, Wade, this was your concern going into UFC 300. How are the global partnerships going to work out? Well, it turned out this was the highest grossing sponsorship sales for an event in UFC history. And I'm sure the fighters are all celebrating that one. And then when it comes to pay-per-views, we don't have numbers, we don't have percentages, but we have stats. In the U.S., this was their highest pay-per-view number since July of 2021, UFC 264, which was the last time Conor McGregor fought, the fight where he shattered his leg against Dustin Poirier. It was the highest pay-per-view in Canada since March of 2020, which is stunning considering that we have had multiple Conor McGregor fights since then and some really big fights. And UFC 248, I had to look this up. It was Israel Adesanya against Yoel Romero. This is a 4-year record in Canada that was beaten by this show. Yes.
This is also it was also the last one before the pandemic. Did that have anything to do with it, you think?
I don't think people were all just dropping their money thinking, this is the end of the UFC. Because if you remember, this was the event where, if I'm not mistaken, was the event where Mark Raimondi famously at the press conference asked Dana White if there were any concerns about this new thing called the coronavirus. And people were just almost laughing it off, and Mark gave the response, "It's a legitimate question," and I think history proved Mark very, very accurate. And then the highest pay-per-view in Australia since UFC 257 in January of 2021, which was another Conor McGregor Dustin Poirier fight. So it was a monster event for the UFC this past Saturday, and big on social too. Amassed more than 1.1 billion video views. So congratulations.
Congratulations to TKO.
They're going to be okay. TKO is going to be all right. Yeah, it was a great day for shareholders everywhere. But there you have it. There is all your feedback, news, recaps. We are going to be back on Thursday. Ask away, the mailbag show. You can submit your questions, forum.postwrestling.com, and this show will be out for everyone on the Post Wrestling Cafe. We'll also be taking audio questions if you are so intrigued to send your voice memo over to us. Memo.fm/postwrestling. Costs you nothing to submit a question, and we will answer them all on Thursday's mailbag show. And then Friday, MCU later, Rewind to SmackDown, and Saturday, it's Kate from Montreal and John Cena with a 3-hour recap of Collision and Rampage.
I don't know if they've confirmed. I hate to just.
Oh, he confirmed to me.
He confirmed to you.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, they're good. Wow. They're tackling Rampage. So not anything we threw at them. They have voluntarily taken it, and if they were to tap out after Collision, it would be understandable.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you to Cena and Kate for doing the Lord's work.
It is kind of insane that when we include the countdown show and Saturday, there is 3.5 hours of AEW programming before we get to this like 5-hour pay-per-view.
Maybe in 2 years' time that we'll wish for these days when there were only so few hours.
Yeah. Man, there's so much wrestling these days. I remember when there was only wrestling every single night of the week for multiple hours.
Remember when there was only one show a night for us to talk about?
Remember when there weren't shows during daytime? The big noon block of WWE turbulence.
Yeah.
The 4-hour
We're
block.
headed there. Yeah.
We're coming. Also, Karen Peterson was on Pollock and Thurston today. A lot diving into the launch of Marigold, as Julia has put everyone on notice. Not Marigold, Marigold.
Yeah.
And Karen giving us the official pronunciation that I hope we are not going to be held to, because it's going to be tough to replicate. But Karen gave us a lot of insight as someone who I think is like the foremost authority when it comes to the Joshi wrestling scene, and getting into kind of a lot of the criticisms that have also come out of, just the training methods within Japan, the idol culture. Karen is a great voice when it comes to just explaining the culture, and not something she necessarily agrees with, but like painting the picture of like what is kind of constructed that the scene has kind of blossomed from and continues in some ways. So a big look at that, as well as Brandon and I going through the NBC News article and other latest news that you can always catch on the Post Wrestling and WrestleNomics feeds. So there you go. And last plug, we will be live as soon as Dynasty ends. We will be up here on the free channel for everybody early Monday morning would be my prediction. So that is strap yourselves in. We will be going late and long on Sunday night / Monday morning. But that is it for us. Thank you for tuning in to Rewind to Dynamite, and we'll speak with you later this week.